Hey guys, welcome to the Perfectly Wasted podcast. I'm the host, DullOxide. Today is episode 22 on 420. You could find all of my previous episodes on the Drinking Wisemen YouTube channel, as well as my bi-weekly podcast, Brew the Truth. All of my day-to-day photos on my Instagram at DullOxide. Now, I know you're probably wondering, why would he do an episode on 420 on 420? And really, the reason is I feel like April 20th has turned into a day that most people only celebrate marijuana, weed, pot, cannabis, whatever you might want to call it. Where realistically, there are a lot of different events that have happened on April 20th that make much more sense to celebrate. And I kind of just want to take a little bit of time to make people aware of this. Now, I wasn't aware of this until I did research on it. Upon researching it, I did find quite a few things that could very realistically be celebrated on April 20th that more than likely should be celebrated because they are kind of a big deal. I also found some things that happened on April 20th that weren't as big a deal, but were still pretty great. So I'm going to go ahead and share some of those things with you guys. So first off, something I feel like not a lot of people know is that one of the most hated humans to ever exist was born on April 20th. And no, it wasn't Trump, actually. But it was who we were alluding to from that photo. It was Hitler. So Hitler was born on April 20th, and there have actually been a lot of different events that have happened in America on the 20th that could be speculated might have been because of this. In most recent history would have been like the Columbine shooting that happened in 1999. And they've said that they don't actually know why the attack happened, but it could have been because they were trying to pay some kind of tribute to the birth of this maniac. So it could be a lot of different things. And something that did happen because of this was that there was a big motion for people to stop violence in video games because they thought that it contributed some to violence in real life. And actually more recent studies have shown that the violence that we see in video games doesn't contribute much, if at all, to violence in real life, and that there are more factors like movie media and television media that contribute more highly to these things. So luckily that was something that kind of got pushed to the wayside because I do love pretty violent video games. Not excessively violent, but somewhat violent, like most people do, I'm sure. Now, another thing that happened on April 20th in 1902, Madame Curie actually refined radium chloride for the first time. Now, this would be an achievement that she actually would go on to do greater things with. It was something that contributed to her getting the 2 Nobel Prizes. She's actually one of only 4, I believe, people in history that have received 2 Nobel Prizes, and the only person in history to receive 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. So that's a pretty big achievement, but that's not actually what I think that we should be celebrating. The achievement of refining radium chloride actually led to a lot of advancements in science and in medical achievements. So there's a ton of things that we learned about radiation and different things that we can use it for, and additionally just the medical treatments that they were able to apply it to that have gone to treating certain types of cancer in the past and even currently. Within recent years, they've actually reassessed different types of drugs that do have forms of radium inside of them that are being used currently to treat cancer. This was a pretty big achievement that I feel like could definitely be one of the reasons that we could look for to celebrate 420 besides just, marijuana. Now, kind of a lesser achievement, which actually isn't much lesser only because it's such a giant achievement in itself, is that the Apollo 16 landing happened on April 20th, and that was in 1972, but, I mean, come on, how many people do you know could say that they landed on the moon? Now, this was also the second to last manned mission to the moon in recent history, and so that's kind of a really big deal. I mean, again, like, how many people have gone to the moon? The United States alone, and then also this being the second most recent manned mission, make this something that should actually probably be celebrated more than it is. However, I mean, it's not the latest or the last, which makes it kind of not as great, I guess. But again, it's a giant achievement, you know? Like, I've never personally met anyone that's ever been to the moon. I highly doubt in my lifetime I'll ever be going to the moon, nor will anyone that I know personally be going to the moon. So, this is definitely something that could probably be being celebrated on this day, but again, it kind of falls to the wayside because it's not as big of an achievement as some other things. Now, also in 2010 on April 20th, the Deepwater Horizon rig explosion happened. This was one of the worst man-made disasters that's ever happened in human history, the repercussions of which could span over 40 years in that area. Which is to say, over the next 40 years, people can still be seeing the results of this oil leak. Now, because of this explosion, the regulations and restrictions on offshore drilling and even on just regular drilling have been tightened, and they've been increased to make it safer for everyone. So that was something good that came out of this, although the end result is pretty disastrous. As I said, this is one of the worst man-made disasters that's happened in human history. So it's not like just by making some slight changes to restrictions, it's going to have a huge impact. In fact, even in that year, the amount of oil that was drilled and produced didn't take a big hit from this gigantic leak into the environment. So overall, this was a pretty big disaster, but we did get a little tiny bit of goodness out of it. Also, there were reports as recent as 2012 that showed that there was still oil leaking from this explosion. Additionally, the settlement that happened as the result of this explosion for the people that were affected by it, that died by it, that are still being affected by it, was one of the largest corporate settlements that's ever happened in the United States history, ranging from $18 billion to $20 billion. Now, that's just the amount that they've got currently recorded and reported. I know that there have been other larger settlements that have happened, the largest of which I believe happened in the 1970s. That was for big tobacco, and that was in the 200 billion area, but they were given a time allotment of, I think, 40 to 60 years to be able to pay that off. That's not quite as sudden as saying you need to pay 17 to 20 billion dollars now. So this was a really big deal and is still a really big deal and will be a really big deal for quite some time. So this is definitely something that we should take into consideration when we're thinking about something like 420. But again, it probably is something people don't care about. Now, lastly, and probably in order of importance, leastly, the reason most people know and celebrate 420 is for marijuana or cannabis or herb or pot or whatever you want to call it. You know, 420 is known around the world as National and Worldwide Cannabis, Weed, Pot Day, and that's what most people celebrate 420 for. I feel like a lot of people don't know why they celebrate it on April 20th, and I feel like they don't care either. But it is widely celebrated throughout the United States at different universities and colleges and different states just because it's legalized. And it's just kind of gotten really out of hand for being the day that marijuana is smoked, basically. Now, the history of it is kind of jumbled. No one really knows why 420 is so celebrated for marijuana, but there are quite a few stories out there. If you do a little bit of research, you can find them. Most of them are very uninteresting. A lot of it stems from saying basically high school kids started it, and it just kind of stuck. Other stories say that it's the code that the police use for anything involving marijuana, and I mean, really, no one actually knows. There have been stories that have been put out that say that there was a group of kids in California that started the entire craze, but no one really cares, no one really knows. As it isn't legal in my state yet, I'm just partaking in alcohol, and I finished a couple of drinks and got kind of lit today, and that's how I'm doing my part of the celebration. If you could, please let me know how you celebrated. Now, if you do know of the original origin story or have any other reason that we should be celebrating April 20th, please don't hesitate to message me or mail me or even comment on this video. If you have any suggestions for future videos or topics that you might want to see me cover, please also comment and let me know. Thanks again for watching. Please do like, subscribe, and share. Again, that was 10 minutes perfectly wasted.